Ignite. Innovative Impulse für die Verlagsbranche.
Hallo und willkommen zu Folge 123 von Ignite Publishing. Ich bin Albrecht Mangler aus München und hier auf dem Bildschirm und in Köln sehe ich
Daniel Lenz, Journalist aus Köln. Und zieht mal die 100 ab bei 123, dann seid ihr bei der Wahrheit. Aber wie ihr seht, halluziniert Albrecht schon. Da sind wir schon beim Thema, nämlich.
Ja, auf jeden Fall. Ja, heute hatten wir mit dem amerikanischen Verleger Fred Zimmermann gesprochen. Er hat ihr das Ziel, die Big Five mal so richtig herauszufordern mit seinem Projekt The Big Five Killer, wo er die größten Verlagshäuser der Welt, behaupte ich jetzt mal, Daniel, du musst mich korrigieren.
Der USA, genau.
Der USA auf jeden Fall herauszufordern, und zwar rein auf Basis von künstlicher Intelligenz. Und das ist wirklich faszinierend, was er sich da zusammengestellt hat, um das auch wirklich zu schaffen. Ich kann sagen, ich bin beeindruckt allein von diesem Setup und wie er da vorgeht. Er hat da verschiedene Prozesse und was ich toll fand, er plaudert da wirklich aus dem Nähkästchen und sagt auch, wie es funktioniert und wie er seine Bücher rausbringt. Und das waren wirklich ganz tolle und, finde ich, auch sehr, sehr spannende Einblicke in den Prozess von so einem AI-gestützten Publizieren. Oder wie hast du das erlebt, Daniel?
Vielleicht ganz kurz nochmal an einer Stelle ins Detail. Also der Fred, der hat sozusagen ein Heer von KI-Agenten, was er orchestriert. Und dieses Heer von KI-Agenten schreibt ihm, kreiert ihm Hunderte von Büchern, die im Jahr erscheinen. Und das Ganze bietet er sowohl im Einzelverkauf an, als auch als Abo-Modell.
Ja.
Das ist so die Klammer der Geschichte.
Also finde ich, passt super in unseren Podcast, weil es halt auch eine mögliche Entwicklungslinie zeigt, wohin das Publizieren nicht nur gehen kann, sondern was heute wirklich auch schon jeden Tag passiert. Und
genau, während der normale Verlag vielleicht anfängt, schon den Klappentext mit KI zu schreiben, gibt es auf der anderen Seite der Weltkugel jemanden, der ein komplettes Heer von Imprints steuert mit KI-Agenten. Daran siehst du auch, dass KI die Publishing-Welt so richtig spaltet, oder?
Ich fand es so eher interessant, dass er die KI nimmt, um halt bestimmte Prozesse zu automatisieren, die er sich halt abschaut. Und er sagt ja auch, das ist jetzt ein Spoiler, dass er genau das nicht machen will, was die Verlage machen, um erfolgreich zu sein, sondern dass er sich so den Weg sucht, um halt in den Stellen, wo die Verlage noch nicht gut sind oder noch, sagen wir mal, wo er sagt, okay, hier kann ich ansetzen, um halt Erfolg zu haben, dass er da ansetzt. Und ich glaube, das ist eher keine Spaltung, sondern ist interessant auch für unsere Verleger und Verlegerinnen oder Verlagsmitarbeiterinnen, die uns zuhören, zu sehen, okay, was sagt denn Fred Zimmermann? Wo sind da Sachen, die er vielleicht besser hinkriegt, als wir mit unseren traditionellen Prozessen?
Und wie ihr sehen werdet, sind wir in dem Gespräch ganz am Ende auch ganz nah dran an einer alten Idee von Albrecht, der sich ja mal den Murderbot gewünscht hat. Ich weiß nicht mehr, in welcher Folge das war, aber die Idee, die taucht fast in jeder Folge wieder auf, indem du die Idee immer wieder ins Spiel bringst.
Ich weiß nicht mehr genau, welche Folge, 125 vielleicht.
Folge 11 mit dem Titel The Netflix of AI, Why Publishers are Sleepwalking into Tech Giant Dependency.
Passt eigentlich wirklich auch gut jetzt, oder? Im Endeffekt zu Fred Zimmermann, wo wir jetzt so drüber sprechen.
Wobei in dem Fall versucht er ja eben nicht zu sleepwalken, sondern selbst die Marschrichtung vorzugeben. Und ja, ob das gelingt, werden wir wahrscheinlich erst in ein paar Jahren dann erfahren, wenn wir wissen, ob es ihm gelungen ist, als Ein-Mann-Verleger sozusagen einen Big Five-Verlag aufzubauen mit Hilfe von KI. Und sicherlich werden wir ihn dann nochmal einladen, Albrecht, oder?
Ja, auf jeden Fall wichtig auch für Fred Zimmermann. Datenanalyse, Datenauswertung und auch hier im Podcast. Wir haben ja noch unseren Datadoc Veronika. Was hast du denn heute mitgebracht?
Nachdem wir bereits in einer der letzten Folgen auf künstliche Intelligenz im Self-Publishing geschaut haben, betrachten wir in dieser Folge die aktuelle KI-Studie der IG Digital des Börsenvereins, erstellt mit der Unternehmensberatung Heiberg, und damit betrachten wir auch die Frage, wo stehen Verlage beim Thema künstliche Intelligenz wirklich? Befragt wurden 139 Personen aus Verlagen, von Management bis Vertrieb. 2 Jahre nach der Einführung von ChatGPT sagen nur 9%, dass KI für ihr Unternehmen aktuell eine hohe oder sehr hohe Bedeutung hat. Zugleich erwarten 84%, dass KI in 5 Jahren für ihren Verlag ein entscheidender Erfolgsfaktor sein wird. Die Branche steht also noch am Anfang, bei gleichzeitig sehr hohen Erwartungen an die Zukunft. Beim Blick auf Chancen und Risiken ist das Bild deutlich abgewogen. Nicht einmal jede dritte Person nämlich 29%, ist der Meinung, dass die Chancen von KI die Risiken deutlich überwiegen. 53% sagen, Chancen und Risiken hielten sich die Waage. Und 14% finden, die Risiken überwiegen. Zu diesen Risiken zählen fehlendes Know-how, mangelnde Ressourcen, hohe Kosten, unklare Einsatzmöglichkeiten, Datenschutz, urheberrechtliche und rechtliche Fragen sowie Zweifel an der Qualität von KI-Ergebnissen. Hinzu kommt eine Sorge, die viele teilen. Durch KI könnte eine Schwemme von Inhalten entstehen, in der Verlage mit ihren sorgfältig kuratierten Produkten unterzugehen drohen. Gleichzeitig stellt sich die Frage, wie man mit einer massiv steigenden Zahl an Inhalten umgehen soll, die an Verlage herangetragen werden, gerade unter Qualitätsgesichtspunkten. Trotz dieser Vorbehalte wird KI schon heute in verschiedenen Bereichen eingesetzt oder konkret geplant. Auf die Frage nach den Einsatzfeldern nennen die Befragten Content-Generierung und Bearbeitung mit 68%, Prozessoptimierung mit 59%, Recherche und Aggregation mit 51%, Marketing und Vertrieb mit 46%, Produktentwicklung und neue Formate mit 28% und rechtliche sowie ethische Fragestellungen mit 12%. Ganz konkret nutzen einige Verlage bereits KI, um personalisierte Empfehlungen auf Basis von Kundeninteressen zu erzeugen. Marketingbudgets und Kampagnen werden durch KI optimiert oder verwaltet. In Fachverlagen werden Texte automatisiert in Hörbücher oder Podcasts umgewandelt oder für barrierefreie Angebote in Audioversionen. Bildungsverlage erstellen dynamische Lernmaterialien, die sich an Lernfortschritt und Bedürfnisse anpassen, inklusive automatisierter Übungen und Quizfragen bis hin zur Kontrolle von Hausaufgaben. Im Marketing unterstützt KI bei Textentwürfen, Zusammenfassungen, Factsheets und Überschriften sowie zunehmend bei der Entwicklung von Buchtiteln. Auch personalisierte Bücher und Verlagsprodukte werden bereits praktisch umgesetzt. Die größte offene Baustelle liegt allerdings nicht bei der Technik, sondern bei dem Menschen. 73% der Befragten sehen den größten Verbesserungsbedarf in der KI-Kompetenz der Mitarbeitenden. Es geht also weniger um die Verfügbarkeit von Tools, sondern um Wissen, Qualifikation und sicheren Umgang. Gefragt nach der Rolle des Börsenvereins wünschen sich die Unternehmen vor allem zweierlei. Zum einen politische Unterstützung bei der Schaffung verlässlicher Rahmenbedingungen, etwa in rechtlicher und urheberrechtlichen Fragen. Zum anderen innerhalb der Branche Austausch und Unterstützung, die Identifikation von Best Practices, Schulungen und Wissenstransfer sowie rechtliche Beratung zu KI-Themen. Unterm Strich zeigt die Studie eine Branche, die KI weder verklärt noch verteufelt. Die Verlage sehen sehr deutlich, dass künstliche Intelligenz an Bedeutung gewinnen wird. Und sie wissen ebenso klar, dass es dafür Kompetenzen, Regeln und gemeinsame Orientierung braucht. Und damit übergebe ich an meine Kollegen Daniel und Albrecht, die heute Fred Zimmermann zu Gast haben, der einen sehr erfolgreichen Verlag auf der Basis von KI aufgebaut hat.
Welcome, Fred.
Hello, Daniel. Hello, Albrecht.
Fred, before talking about your project Big Five Killer, you have a decent background in the publishing business. Perhaps you could elaborate on that. Where do you come from?
Well, my professional career involved primarily providing high-quality information services to professionals in the science, legal, government communities. So I worked for LexisNexis. I worked for a company that was a contractor for NASA's Earth observation system. I worked for a Gale company that serves a public library market. And in all these roles, I was a product manager or research scientist developing content to meet the needs of the people in the professional, in those particular professional communities. So I've had a lot of experience in thinking about how to present complicated information to well-educated people who have high standards. I also am a lifetime book lover. Honestly, I think that's probably the single most important qualification to being a publisher. I started my own publishing company in 2006. I published about 500 books in print since then. I published a variety of topics, a lot of naval history, a lot of military history. Those are personal interests. And they also happen, fortunately, to be, relatively, I wouldn't say affluent, but the customers are willing to pay for technical content. So there's a nice, healthy margin in that particular field. And I published books about geopolitics, and I've experimented in lots of other genres. I've kind of tried to do one of everything, to see, what would stick. And I've been thinking very actively about how to create different types of publishing products for a long time. So that's kind of the confluence of things that brought me to this point.
And then you set up your project, which is called Big Five Killer online, which sounds a little bit like a direct declaration of war against the world's largest traditional publishers. And this is apparently a one-man publishing house aiming to take on the Big Five with the help of AI. Is it pure madness, or has it a method?
Well, it has a madness, and to be perfectly candid, I chose the title because I wanted something that would be sure to get attention, and I don't, actually think that I am in a position to compete with multi-billion-dollar corporations on an equal footing, at least at this point. But I do think that there is a huge opportunity, and not just an opportunity, but sort of an inevitable process happening where there are going to be alternatives to the Big Five, and where scale is one of those categories, on which there will be competition. And crucially, I also am a very big booster of the belief that AI, generative models, LLMs, can produce high quality content when properly directed. I think that you have to be very selective. I think that, in many cases, algorithmic publishing is, not as high quality as human. But if you pick your spots carefully, you can produce things that are close to the top tier of what humans can do. And I think that's only going to become more true as time goes on. And I'm in the camp of, let's embrace it rather than fight it or fear it.
All right. And in our first interview, if I remember correctly, you said that there was a kind of historic turning point in AI productivity at the end of 2025. What exactly happened then that enabled you as a lone operator to build an entire publishing house in Silico?
Well, that's a great question. I have been trying to build a publishing house in Silico for almost 12 years. I first started the code of my first company was called Page Kicker. I started in 2012. I taught myself to program and wrote it almost entirely in Bash, which is the Unix command language. The technology has been steadily improving over that time. People first started realizing the capability of generative models in 2022. There were a series of, each release of OpenAI was more and more capable and could produce more and more amounts of plausible tech prose. And in late 2025, something happened that people had not been anticipating, which was that there was a real step change in the quality of what they call agentic AI. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, but this is, it did not come out of nowhere. For about a year and a half before that, people have been experimenting with what they call thinking out loud AI, where the AI has a kind of dialogue with itself. You ask it a question, and it says, and you can watch watch it. It's coached to say to itself, the user has asked me a question. What can I do about it? It wants me to write a book. Well, I should ask him what the topic is, and go on and on like that. And until late last fall, the results were pretty chuckle-headed. I mean, you would watch the AI and be talking, and it'd be like, what's a book? Should it be in French, or should I write it on a stone tablet? The people were not are underwhelmed. It's also extremely expensive, and you see that is still happening today. There are big subsidies, huge factor of 10 or more subsidies for the Agentic API providers. But in around 2025, around November, people started realizing that now there had been a combination of factors where the agents could be given instructions and they would go off and do them, and that really transformed things. You got people suddenly realized that you could give a computer the command to go off and write me a program that will build me a cover that will satisfy the Lightning source specs, and it would succeed. And that was really dramatic and revolutionary. It's publishing is a tiny sliver of what it's taken. It's most programmers today have switched from writing code to giving their models instructions, and usually in Markdown, just typing simple text. And so when that happened, I was a little bit slow to notice or believe it, because I had tried the thinking out loud models and had been unimpressed. I thought, well, they sound sort of stupid and they're super expensive. It's, if you're paying out of pocket, it's thousands of dollars to do anything. But I subscribed to one of the services, Anthropic's Claude AI, and I realized, wow, this can really do stuff. And at that point, I started taking all the things that I've been building in different tools, mostly Python and Bash, and I started seeing how I could do with transforming, with building newer, better versions using the Agentic AI, and it's been very, very effective. I've been able to build a lot of new stuff. I was able to, transform my personal private pipeline that I had been working on for years, and could only produce a few books, a month or whatever, into something that now I can, I'm producing hundreds of books a month, and there's no, physical obstacle to scaling. I've also elaborate, front end. I've really taken the in silico idea to heart. And I said, well, at different points, I sort of escalated to myself. I said, well, why am I building one book when I could build 10? And why am I building books for one imprint and one, topic area when I could build hundreds? And of course, because it's a whole different set of challenges. Doing things one at a time, you're acutely focused on all the mechanics and the tinkering to get things just so. When you start scaling to the point where you are not able to personally inspect every single output, it becomes much more about managing processes and figuring out how to achieve the highest possible cross-checking quality, making sure that you have layers and layers and layers of redundancy and, management to prevent errors. And that is, it's a whole different set of challenges. Right now I'm in the scaling to hundreds stage. I'm hoping, next year I'll be scaling to thousands. And, then after that, there's I don't see an in principle limit to what any single person in that, I'm nothing special. Anybody can do this with access to the right tools and enough, reasonable amount of technical savvy. What I see happening in the future is, an explosion of the ability to create quote unquote books that are of high quality. Right now I think Amazon has 40 million books in print. ISBN, there's 44 million a year, and one of the responses in the publishing community is too many books.
Let's talk about that later. Yeah, that is a challenge. Yeah,
and I just think that's not viable. There are going to be lots and lots of books, and as we talked about in the previous interview, there's a relatively static number of readers. The book industry is a slow growth industry. If anything, many people like myself are really worried about the future of book readers. I don't see book reading become something like enjoying opera, where it's kind of a niche hobby. But and so far, I mean, people have been very worried about this for many years. I remember the first ebook came out in 2001. There, people were terrified. No one's going to buy books anymore. And fortunately, it hasn't worked out that way. Most figures I've seen say that about 25% of book, standard book purchases are ebook.
In the US, here in Germany, it should be Albrecht, 10%, not even 10%.
Yeah, it depends on the genre, of course. I mean, scientific literature or like.
But let's start with coming back to the numbers. So the goal is to look at the BISAC categories, which are a couple of hundred, and try to replicate these imprints, which the big five publishers have, by finding interesting topics which fit to these categories, right?
Yeah, just a couple of clarifications on the numbers. There are 52 top-level BISAC categories and 5,179 second and third level nodes. And I should say that I am, the choice of BISAC as a organizing principle. That's not really a first principles choice. That's a convenience choice. It's a standard in the. It exists. It covers most of it. You can work with it. So I, to organize my thinking, I said, well, let me see. I'll count how many imprints the Big Five has, and I'll see how many BISAC categories they cover. And it turns out that the Big Five publishers cover almost all of the BISAC categories. In fact, I think they cover every single BISAC top level category, and probably I'm sure it's a high percentage of the lower level nodes. And the most recent figures I read were that the Big Five publishers generate about 15,000 copies or individual titles per year. And they have between all of them, they have about 300 imprints. And those are all to on a computer science level, those are all tractable numbers. You can build 500 of something or 300 of something. You can build 15,000 of something if you can build one. So that's kind of where I see the numbers are. They are in the. It's not like if I define my goal as offering a parallel offering to the Big Five that covers the same breadth of categories and offers equal coverage, equal number of offerings, that's 300 imprints, 15,000 titles. That's doable. And that was kind of what crystallized my thought. Well, Big Five killer. I can do this. Other people can do it. I'd like to do it first.
And yours, and the status quo is you have 11 imprints, active imprints right now?
Well, yeah, it depends on how you count it. I have my original imprint, Nimble Books, has about 400 books in print. I have 11 imprints that have different numbers of books in print. I have 575 imprints that are in various stages, and they're actually, a lot of them are quite far along. The gating is really is me, being able to devote attention to curate something that I think is worthwhile. For all these imprints, I have a reasonably elaborate process where the system defines a scope, or I call it a charter for the imprint. It hires a publisher and a lead editor. It creates AI personas that are meant to play the role of these people. It does market research. It goes off and uses web searches and finds out what's commonly available about the market for comic book criticism, what have you. And then I have it come up with ideas, prototypes. I say, what if you're going to come up with something new in this genre? What would that look like? And then at that point, I turn things over to an evaluation panel where I ask them a different set of models to evaluate what the first model has done, and then. Honestly, right now, most of those imprints are on the shelf waiting for me to pay attention to them. But they're all they're all reasonably far along in that they have a charter, they have sort of a plan when we get resources. They're so they're not. It's not like they. I could say 11 are really actively working on. There are maybe 60 that are getting closer to operational status, and there's 500 that are waiting for me.
So I think the process you just described, I learned, is called, or you're calling it auto ideation. So where you have the panel of different roles. Maybe you can just walk our listeners through the process, because I thought it was, because in the end you get a number of how great the idea is, or if it is if it is promising to publish the book according to the idea. So what is the process looking like? You get emails with, these are the ideas and these are the numbers, and then you are like thumbs up or thumbs down?
The auto ideation process is something that's relatively new. It wasn't in my original plan. It wasn't in my original thinking. I was thinking, I'll evaluate them. And a couple of months ago, there was a really important article by Andrej Karpathy, who's one of the lead scientists at OpenAI, where he demonstrated a technique for giving a model a set problem, telling it, here is a numerical criterion that you're supposed to achieve. Now go and iterate on it until you get it, until you achieve this goal. And he demonstrated this really influential essay that you can now, with the more capable models, they're now capable of being given a numeric goal and going off and iterating until they achieve it. And you can do that with anything. And so I thought, well, I can apply that to my own process. So what I'm doing now is, an idea comes into the system. I have it fleshed out. Not super deeply, maybe 2 pages of descriptions of, what would this look like as a book? Short table of contents, or point of view, so on and so forth. And then I send it to an evaluation panel of 7 models, and each model is asked to carry out a particular responsibility. One is a production coordinator, who's asked to, how hard it would be to produce a book like this, books that require lots of permissions or require, complicated multimedia layout. Those are harder. Straight text usually scores better. The other evaluators are asked to look at the market potential. They're asked to look at the quality of the idea, so on. And then they come back with they each give numeric ratings, which are rolled up into a single number, which is on a scale from 1 to 9. And all the ideas get a number. And then there's a threshold where if a idea is below a 5, it's thrown out immediately. If an idea is above a 7, it's given more resources and fleshed out further. If an idea is in the 6 range, it gets the model then formulates how can we improve this model so it will score better. For example, if it had a model that has challenges with production, the models originally kept telling me to, hire to make a partnership with, CBS or whatever. You can do this book if you make a partnership with National Geographic. And well, yes, you're absolutely right. That would be a much better book, but no, I can't do that. So figure out for me, let's try a different path. So the model will come back and say, well, if you use imagery sourced from NASA, you can get a lot of beautiful things with minimal administrative overhead. And that would rate it would bump up the rating. Next time it was evaluated, to bump up the rating to a 6.8. I have to go send another round and see, what can we do that would improve this even better? Well, maybe if you use a kind of photo imagery that's not well known readily, that's interesting to people, like what's still called multispectral imagery, that would make it into a 7. And then the ideas get to the 7, and then I rank the top ideas, and then I I try to follow my own advice, follow my own system, and implement the ideas that score highest. And I will say I do not 100% do that, because everybody else, I have my own preferences, and if I think an idea is good or interesting, I'll pull it up and escalate it and say, I'm going to do this. I want you to do this anyway.
So in the end, you are the gatekeeper, traditional publisher.
I'm a gatekeeper, I'm a publisher, and all the ideas, emanate from me in some sense, in the sense either that I came up with them individually, or in the sense I said, go look at this area and come up with ideas that, fit the following criteria. So the publisher, the human publisher, is still very much in charge of this process. It's a fundamentally human experience, because human builders built all these tools. And it's just, I, like many other people, I've suddenly, wow, instead of having a hammer and screwdriver, I have a CAD CAM machine shop that I can use. And, so it's empowering, I think.
What I found interesting in preparation is that, for example, a book like the Food Shock Atlas, you say that this is particularly efficiently produced by AI. So without the use of AI, this would be very, very hard to produce it.
Yeah,
So,
that's correct. I mean, if you think about, what it would take to produce, if you say, I'm going to produce an authoritative atlas of all the possible food shocks in the world that may occur in the next 5-10 years. Think what would be involved. You need experts, you need research, you need people to create atlases. It's something that would take months and months of dedicated effort by an expert team to do. And the AI can do each of the individual components reasonably well. So it can do all of them reasonably well. If you put it together and give it the right structure and do it fast.
in the Food Shock Atlas, if you have numbers or graphics, how do you make sure that the statistics or the numbers, the figures are correct? Do you have also AI agents as fact checkers, or how do you prevent hallucinations in these kinds of factual
Well, there are a
things?
number of things you can do that really reduce the possibility of hallucination. One thing that works quite well is to start by asking the system to gather data. Go out and find the FAO data on food supplies. Go out and find peer-reviewed articles about threats to this food supply chain. I had the system go out and build a database of maybe 1,000 peer-reviewed articles, and then several important numeric, well-vetted data sets. And I said, now that you've got this, rely on this as your grounding for what you write about. So usually that will tell the models not to. That's enough to keep the models on track, where they don't just make up the numbers. But you've really got to be vigilant, because the models are inherently prone to filling gaps by hallucinating. So I have layers and layers of prompts. I have what they call adversarial checking, where you turn it over to a completely different model. You often use Google to do my fact checking, because I sort of assume that they have a pretty good factual base. And I say, Google, check this book and look. Let's attribute every single fact that's in it. You can't verify a fact by your own calculations, report it, and we'll address it. I can't say that that the results are dramatically better than what humans can do. But have you met humans? Humans make mistakes. So it seems to me, from where my looking at the models and what they're doing now, that they can produce, they can do good professional level work in most of the domains they're in. And, there's a great deal of effort done to quantifying that and assessing it and so forth. I read a couple of days ago, someone, OpenAI claimed that they had solved an unsolved math problem that human scientists had not been able to do. These claims, sometimes it's hard, not easy to tell. Sometimes it's claims like that are actually about, it's great at web research. It's not actually solving, it's just finding, someone wrote an article 20 years ago that was, accidentally solved this problem and nobody realized it. But you can do pretty well with these kind of techniques, and that's what I'm trying to do.
We just talked about creating one single book. Your plan is to create thousands of books, and I wonder how you manage to solve this hallucination quality checking while producing hundreds of books.
It's all. I mean, it's just multiple layers of checking and redundancy. The crucial insight, and a human publisher of a publishing house, does not check every single word himself. There are layers and layers of assistants and qualified people who do various tasks to achieve the high levels of quality that are seen in the output of the big five, and also honestly the sometimes not so great levels of quality that are seen in the output from every publisher. One of the fundamental facts of the book publishing industry is that there are millions and millions of books, and most of them aren't very good. So I just try, I personally am a educated person. I, pride scientific accuracy. I, like doing things right. I spend most of my energy goes to devising layers of cross-checking and improving the accuracy of the output of the models.
Is there a recursive element? I mean, for example, you get market signals, you have a book out, and then you see, okay, this idea, it sells XY copies. This must be interesting to this and that target group. So this is why I give it back to get better ideation process. Do you do something like this to integrate live signals or trends? For example, you see now people like ice cream in blue.
Yes, I do. I do a lot of things like that. One of the agents is a sort of business agent, and I've given that agent in the editorial panel, given that agent access to my historical revenue records. Which go back 20 years, or several hundred titles. So I have a fair idea of, at least in my little domain, I have an idea of what works and what doesn't. So it incorporates those kinds of concerns. It incorporates concerns it sees from the business records in its ideation. And I make it, issue a projection. How well do you think this book is going to do? Even though I know it's mostly a guess, but I was trying to build a track record now of predictions versus performance. And then as the books go out into the marketplace, I start seeing the level of return, and that is fed back into the auto ideation queue, and the auto ideation system is aware of what types of books are actually selling better than I expected, and it does that. The issue is it's slow. The publishing industry is not one with instant feedback. You put a book out, you can get you find out if it worked months or years later. So there's a sort of dichotomy I'm still struggling with between having a lightning fast ideation queue and a human speed book reading world. But it's it's an interesting set of challenges, and it's a good way to go. I wouldn't say everyone has to do it. I wouldn't say it's the unique best approach, but it's really worth an experiment, and that's what I'm doing.
If we think about the further steps in this process, are there still steps which the machines cannot do for you?
Well, there's a lot of steps that they can't do. I mean, I cannot tell an AI or a model to write a great novel. They can't do it right
Okay.
now. Whereas I can say there are many
That's
steps.
a different topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
This is a weakness out there. But when you create a, I don't know, non-fiction book, the food atlas, are there still steps you as a human being have to set in, fulfill?
only the verification and vision steps. I mean, someone has to decide. Even AIs are pretty good at coming up with plausible visions for something, but someone still needs to decide: do I like this? Are we going to go forward with it? I can usually add something to I don't if I when I want a book that's like this, and I don't want the book that you're writing. The book your first version is sort of boring. Let's punch it up and make it a little more interesting. Here's a couple of ways I would do it. So that kind of thing, the extra quality increments, the AI can't do. I'm trying to think if there's anything on a more technical level that it can't do, and I really can't think of anything other that I think I've got pretty much every step is in silico now, except there's also I honestly I'm not that great at marketing. Right, that's pretty important. The models are constrained. People don't want to talk to models. Necessarily. That's not where people get the ideas of what they want to read. Or that's a weird.
Would you say that auto-ideation would also work the other way around? So it would help me to find books I really like.
Yes, it certainly could. And I think that's kind of the big picture of what's happening with publishing is I hope that there are going to be more and more niches of small groups of people who can get exactly what they want. I see that in my my particular publishing in my naval history world. I have published more books about PT boats than any human being because it just so happens that PT boats are the U.S. version of motor torpedo boats, small craft, and there's a small but really diligent group of people who really want to read everything they can about this particular topic. And of course, a big publisher, which in this case would be, the big publishers do naval history. The big five publish a handful, 5 or 10 high quality naval history books a year. They don't do one on PT boats. The naval publishers who are leaders in the market, like the Osprey or Seaforth or the United States Naval Institute Press, they publish 100 books. Maybe they publish one book on PT boats. There's the PT boat loving community can consume more books than that, and that's true for every single niche, right? There's a niche of people who are passionate about something and want to read about it a lot, and they are not yet they are supply limited. And that's kind of where I see things going is, this auto-ideation process becomes, something where everybody who's likes book and is passionate about books can find everything they want and that's depth they want. That's not true today, but I think it's going to be possible in the future. And rather than bemoaning that as there are too many books, I think the publishing industry needs to embrace it. This is what we can be. We can be the people who provide depth to every single person who wants it.
We were wondering when we prepared the interview, because in my understanding, what AI is very good, among other things, is recognizing patterns in a big sea of data, so to speak. So if I were thinking about how to create a book with AI, I would look at the major publishers and see what their best-selling books are, because the numbers, at least in Europe, are that most publishing houses, they have a few books that really make the large part of the turnover. So maybe I would go and just concentrate on these part of the books to understand the patterns and then in a way reproduce it. But if I understand correctly with your auto-ideation process, you go just the other way around, as you just described it, more depth, more book, so to make a more broader approach. So what brought you? So the question is, why did you choose this path of producing lots of books instead of
long tail
way? Exactly.
it's a question of sort of complementing. What can I do that the Big Five can't do? What can they do that I can't do? I can't hire someone as great a writer as Stephen King. I'm not in a position to engage top-level human experts on particular topics and have them write, leading books. So, what can I do differently and what can I do better? And those criteria are built into the evaluation system. It asks, is this something where an algorithmic publisher has an advantage? And there are, many places where that actually is true. I mean, for example, there's going to be a papal encyclical called Magnifica Humanitas that's going to be issued probably tomorrow, which Pope Leo describes his thoughts on humanity's stance versus AI. I asked my model, and this is where I sort of initiate things. I said, can you write a book about this? And it said, no, I can't because the book's not out yet. But what I could do is I could write a history. I could write a sort of a biography, an intellectual biography of Pope Leo, and describe here's what's publicly known about the evolution of his thinking. He's an Augustinian. He served in Peru, and he was spoken about these topics that are of interest to him. And so I had the system build a book. It's in print today. You can buy it today. It's a 170-page analytical account of the history of Pope Leo's thinking, theological thinking. A human being would have taken months to do it. I think it's reasonably solid. I don't make extravagant claims about quality versus the top tier human, but it looks pretty solid to me. And it exists. It's there. You can get started with it. So humans can't do that. AIs can, and humans equipped with that can build systems like the Big Five killer that does that for lots of different things simultaneously. So it's really about don't challenge huge corporations head on. Disruptive innovation is usually about challenging big corporations by doing things that they can't do that are still cool and useful to other people, and doing them cheaper and faster. So in that sense, I'm following a well-worn playbook of disruptive innovation, Clayton Christensen, all that kind of stuff, where we're just you pick your battles and you try to win them.
So traditional publishers depend on the quality of their staff, right? You depend on the quality of the machines, the agents, right? This is your staff, actually. And as you have already mentioned, right now, the machines struggle with writing fictional books, right? Novels. Why do you have an explanation for that? Why do they struggle with these genres?
Well, there's a kind of a layered series of explanations of why that is the case. Some of them are technical and some of them are incentive and organizational. People don't often think, I think people don't emphasize enough how much the quality of the models that exist today is aligned with the business needs of the venture capitalists and the corporations that are building them. OpenAI and all the other companies like that have built models that are very good at producing medium complexity analytical prose because there is a huge market for that. All the pre-training models and post-training models takes enormous amounts of time and money. Literally billions of dollars are spent on training a frontier model, at every stage, and that money answers to business needs. So the investment has been in analytical prose, not fiction. Part of it is just that there are also a lot of very technical and human nature issues that also have to be dealt with. Human beings high quality human writers have a unique voice that reflects their personal experience and values at a level of detail that AIs, cannot do right now.
But on the other hand, all these models have scraped thousands of ebooks, right? They've stolen the ebooks from LibGen and other platforms using these ebooks, fictional ebooks as well, for training purposes. So the models should have a very broad fiction basis. So that cannot be a problem.
Well, it is a problem. Partly for the reasons I just stated. They have a fiction base, but nobody has spent billions and billions of dollars improving models' ability to write romance novels, right? They have spent that money improving the ability to produce bulletized summaries of corporate memos. Yay! But that's a big issue, and you can see, and there are people who experiment with that. I don't know if you read about there have been several efforts. A guy recently came out with something called Talkie, which was a model trained only on material pre-1928, and so it only knows about the world before 1928. But these are mostly one-off things. So I'm not aware of anybody who has taken a corpus. I don't think big companies have the resources at this point or the structural alignment to, devote the energy to solving those problems. And I also, I question the argument that ebooks have been stolen. To me, this is the position that the Fifth Circuit took in the Anthropic case. That's I'm not sure which circuit it was, but in the Anthropic case, the district judge found that training is reading, and I don't. Now, the reason that the Anthropic has liability in that case, and this is a very active area of law and unsettled, but is because they acquired the books for training by stealing.
I see. Although you focus on nonfiction books and Sudoku, for example, you have plans for concepts for fiction imprints. And you said in our previous interview, my working strategy is that every fiction imprint should grow into its own Marvel cinematic universe. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at these shared universes that are very commercially successful, they have a sort of set of tractable phenomena. They have, hundreds or thousands of characters, the J.K. Rowling, intellectual property universe. She's just devised hundreds of characters that all have complicated backstories and interactions with one another. This is a kind of a proven model for making money for media companies. So my thought is that as a corporation, as an AI first corporation, it's probably smarter for me to try to build these systems of valuable IP than it is to try and create one-off Booker Prize winners. As a human being, it might be much more important to me to write a outstanding novel about something that's really I'm passionate about. But as a corporation, probably more important to be able to create these sort of interrelated sets of IP. And again, it's a tractable challenge. So that's that's just that. But that that's a requirement that I have imposed on the design of the system for business and aesthetic reasons.
Yeah. One question concerning the book market. We looked at data that shows that roughly 40% of the Americans didn't read a single book in the last year. So it's quite a static audience. So I mean, of course, there are people who buy one book a year as present or two, and you have avid readers who basically live in the bookstore, if I over-exaggerate. So these people buy more books, but who is going to buy all those books that are in the market currently?
Well, that's a very important question. And I've said in the previous interview, I think, every single person in book publishing ought to be thinking every day about how, are we going to have more young readers? How are we going to not lose the reader audience completely? We don't want to become opera. Not that I love opera, but that there's really a great need for thinking about how to grow the market. And I don't accept the sort of fatalistic attitude of, cell phones are going to kill everything and no one will ever read again. Even though there's a lot of directional evidence pointing that way. I think that, on a personal level, I'm trying to come up with ideas that will appeal to young readers. There are particular beliefs I have. I personally believe that the middle school age in the United States, which is 9 to 12, it's a very formative time for young people. They sort of get launched on track to, whether they're going to succeed in high school or not. There's a lot of places where they can diverge. So I thought to myself, I'd like to see if I can have this system create books that help people, young people like that, and convert them into readers, and maybe help them in their path along towards success in life. So that's kind of, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question 100%, but I think it's resignation is not the right answer for me. There are a lot of people in the world who don't have access to all the books in the world. I mean, there's, probably, maybe 800 million young people under 18 in Africa today. They have access to a, diverse but limited book ecosystem they can't, one of the biggest problems in the book publishing industry financially for the book publishers is that only a certain portion of the countries in the world have people who are willing to pay trade premiums for books. The Indian book market is enormous, but does not pay top dollar for U.S. market books. So there's a huge population of human beings who deserve to be able to read high quality work that can't.
Even paradoxically, I think people read more than ever. I mean, all the AI answers and all this stuff on the internet, different things. But let's ask the final question, the last question we prepared. And just today I read an article in the newspaper about how Google is to change search. So you are directed more into AI answers, and they will really try in the long run, if I understood correctly, that an agent will give you an insight or come back to you if there's something new. So the question is, will this also shape the book of the future, or at least the, I'd say, non-fiction book of the future, that you have, as you indicated before, a deep dive agent that is actualizing your book as we speak or as you go? Or do you have, so basically, what is your view on the book in the future?
Oh, I absolutely think that is the case. And it's happened already. 10 or 15 years ago, people started realizing, hey, Google's answer sets are pretty crummy. They're full of ads. I think maybe 2017, a guy named Simon Dudley did an interview with me where he asked me about this. And I told him, I think there's a better approach to producing answers for to questions than giving them a list of 10 articles that is dotted with, 8 of which are ads, and forcing the reader to click on all of them because you make money that way. I think, yes, the market is finally responding now that the tools are able to do it by, when you have a intent, a search question, maybe it is more helpful to give the person a 3-paragraph answer than 10, ads that you want them to click on. So yeah, I think that's going to shape the evolution of how humans consume information. It's already happening. I prefer to read 3 paragraphs of model prose to clicking through ads. What I hope, and this is a really crucial distinction, is that people don't lose the ability for deep immersive reading and learning. Right now, all the incentives on the Google side and the website of the world is to kind of keep people at a surface level where they're still engaged with, frankly, the revenue producing engine that is the web. It's not in the interest of companies that are supported by advertising to create environments where people are immersed in thought. be perfectly blunt. What I think is going to happen is you're going to see lots of energy going towards increasing people's shallow and medium reading abilities, and maybe less going to their ability to lose themselves and really dive deep into a topic and concentrate. And I think that's a gap that, I'm interested in filling. I'd like to make sure that, people retain the ability to read deeply and, immerse themselves in what they're learning.
One possible space which you describe, just I'm thinking at the moment, is that you have a subscription model to a world that enables a deep dive reading, maybe on a custom agentic basis. So we've seen in preparation that you have a subscription model on the Big Five killer. Is this kind of the direction you're heading? Okay.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going. I'm in the process right now, in fact, of generating a iOS iPhone model that will let people buy subscriptions or packages. Naval history, subscribe to a romance novel channel, and so forth. And I think that's the way things will be going. And if it's done properly, I think people would rather get a curated stream that meets their satisfaction criteria than going off and randomly searching things until they get, the right combination of 3-paragraph answers. But, these are complementary streams of activity. There's a valid reason for, the existence of all the information systems we have. It's just a question of, who can fill them well and make people happy by doing this. There's been a big debate in the U.S. recently. I don't know if you've followed it, but, why are there billionaires? And, should there be any billionaires? And the tech industry answer to that is it's pretty simple. You build something that lots of people want. And I think that's true. And there's also, there's a counter argument, which is, well, gee, do you have to build it in such a way that you own everything and make it impossible for anyone else to get any oxygen? And I'm not interested in doing that. But, that's kind of where things are, tend to go. People, either you build things that people want a lot, or you don't prosper.
Perhaps let me come back with the final question to the question of the future of the book, or the book of the future. Right now, you are orchestrating a range of AI agents. The book of the future could be that the reader herself is orchestrating these AI agents. Albrecht, this is your most popular question, that you build up your own agent to write a fiction novel.
The Murderbot, yeah.
Murderbot, yeah. Your initial idea. So where's the publisher in this model then?
Well, the publisher is, designing the agents so that they are good at what they do.
So you sell the agents to the readers. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's another angle to it too, which is, and this is, I'm not 100% positive about this happening, but a lot of writing is going to become for the models. Right now, scientists write these complicated papers that are formatted precisely and for consumption by other scientists. In a sense, why are they not writing them in a format that the models can consume? Because the model, people are that's the single highest leverage way of getting your ideas across to lots of people.
So the humans are working for the machines finally.
And the machines are writing for each other, which is even worse. But I think that will start happening.
Wow. Daniel, we should do a Turing test before every podcast in a few years.
I'm real, I promise. Yeah.
So this is not an optimistic ending, but nevertheless, Fred, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yep.